I had a friend who sold burnt DVD discs. Burnt discs of certain kids shows. At the time, nobody else knew how to burn discs, so he took advantage of this. Of course it was illegal, but he was crafty and knew how to avoid getting caught. It was also his only income, so I think it was excusable considering that he needed to eat as well. He used a torrent to get all of the episodes that he was requested, and then he would burn them and of course sell them. One day, I had gotten a call from him. I could tell by the tone of his voice that he was in a bad mood, and he told me to come over right away and visit him. I made it to his house by riding my bike there, since it was a short distance. I knocked on the door. He answered, and he looked happy to see me. He was relieved that I was here, and he told me that he had been requested to torrent the complete series of Caillou. Apparently, he told me that he had found a mysterious episode and that I should watch it right away. At first I laughed because who would watch a little kid's show? If you don't know, the show is about a young boy named Caillou, off of the title of the show, who learns about growing up. While kids may like the show, adults hate it because of how whiny the protagonist was. He threw a tantrum most of the time to solve his problems. Basically, it wasn't a good show at all. But the thing is that my friend looked very desperate. I knew he wasn't going to let me leave until I watched this one episode. So I figured, okay, I have enough time. I can just watch one episode, and then that's it. My friend began to play the episode. Now, the grandmother who narrated each of the episodes never showed up or spoke. Caillou's mom, Rosie, and Gilbert the cat were also absent and were nowhere to be seen. Caillou is trying to open up a door that he sees. After a few seconds of trying to open this door, his dad shows up and he has a strict look on his face. He begins to scold Caillou, telling him that he is never to go into that room. Considering what Caillou had done in the past and seeing Caillou's dad this angry, it was surprising to see him like this. Caillou begins to pout and he walks off. The scene changes and we see him sitting on his bed. He looks unhappy. Now, I thought this episode would have an important moral that would teach children not to invade other people's things without asking. I mean, after all, that is a good moral, right? However, Caillou begins to get curious, and he uses his own imagination. He imagines his parents being secret agents and keeping their base hidden behind that door. I thought this part was adorable and innocent, as it was something only a younger kid could think up. But eventually, his curiosity gets the better of him, and he decides to sneak into the forbidden room. Caillou looks to see if his dad is around, and then he finally enters the room. At this point, my friend got up and paused the video. He told me he needed to use the restroom, and that I could watch the rest of the episode by myself. Of course, I agreed. After all, he had already seen it, so there were no spoilers. Caillou is finally in the room, but his mood immediately changes. Stapled to the walls were various drawings, all of Caillou, but they were of him getting tortured in some sick way. In one picture, he was being ran over by a truck. Another had him lying on the floor with a broken baseball bat beside him. Caillou was shown being sliced into tiny pieces, getting stung to death by angry bees, freezing to death with frostbite marks on him. I mean, all of these were just brutal. But there was one final picture that was probably the most horrifying of them all. His own dad, killing him with an axe. Caillou knew what this room was for. It was where his dad could peacefully vent all his frustrations by drawing them out. Caillou was a punching bag to his dad, or else his dad hated him this whole time. Caillou is obviously traumatized by this. He can't handle all this, and he begins to cry, which only alerts his dad, who now enters the room. Caillou's father is upset by the intrusion. He tells Caillou that he should have never have seen this and how he was never meant to be here. He didn't respond to his dad. He looked pale, stayed silent. Immediately the screen changes, without any transition effects. Caillou is seen hanging from a wire in his room. The episode ended there, abruptly. When the nightmare was finally over, I left the room, only to hear crying coming from the bathroom. He may have been an adult, but he couldn't handle the episode and its content like I could. I mean, I've seen a lot of weird things, so I was used to it. I still didn't expect any of that to ever appear, especially for a kid's show. I waited for a while to see if he would calm down, but his sobbing would only get worse the longer I stayed. I decided it was time to go home, so I left a note on his kitchen table. My friend continued his operation afterwards of selling burnt discs. Eventually, though, he did retire because he had gotten a good paying job. A job that paid him more than what he was doing. To this day, he has never brought up that episode, and I don't intend to bring it up, because I'm worried he'll go into a breakdown. Those images, I get the feeling, those disturbing images, they're still burned into his head to this day.